And we're back, ready to tackle another equation here. What you're going to notice, well, before you even dive into an equation, you need to see what's in the equation so you know what you can do. First of all, you want to see, does it have anything weird? Is there a radical? Is there a fraction? And for this one, no, there's nothing weird, so to speak. Then it comes down to the question of, is it quadratic or linear? Since you have x squared, you know that it's going to be quadratic, and it can't be linear. So if it's quadratic, we go through the progression for solving a quadratic equation. And I suggest that you first start off with the square root property. Now, when we've done this before, we've said that we can't use the square root property if you have more than one instance of the variable. So x is in two different terms, so I know that the square root property does not work. The next thing you would try to do is factor and use the zero factor theorem. Well, you already have everything on the same side of the equation. Here, since the lead coefficient is 1, you'd be looking at the 31 and trying to find factors of 31 that add to 18. But you won't be able to do that. 31 is prime, and 1 and 31 do not add to 18, so no dice here. The third thing you would try to do is to complete the square. Now, you can complete the square on any quadratic equation, but you want to make sure that you do it on nice ones. Nice ones being those that have a lead coefficient of 1, and you want this guy to be even, and it is. So we solve this by completing the square, and the first step here is to move the constant to the other side. So let's take the 31 and move it to the other side as a minus 31. Notice that I've got a gap right here. We're going to fill that in with a number so that we can factor the left side of the equation. But we want to factor it in a very special way. We want it to factor so that at the end it's the same two factors giving us a square. So the whole point of completing the square is to create a scenario where you can use the square root property. So when you factor this, it's going to be x and a number, and to figure out what goes here, you take this coefficient, you divide it by 2. That gives us negative 9. So divide by 2, and then if you square this number, that tells you the number you were supposed to put in the gap over here, which is a plus 81. So by having a positive 81 here, the left side of the equation factors as x minus 9 times x minus 9, which gives you the square. Now, since I added 81 on the left side, I've changed the problem unless I also add 81 to the right side. So on the left side, we added 81 so we could factor as a square. The right side, that 81 is there to create balance. Combine these like terms and we get 50. And so at this point, this is a quadratic equation where you'd want to use the square root property. We manipulate to use the square root property. So let's take the square root of both sides. Remember that when you take the square root of both sides, you have to use plus or minus. On the left side, you get x minus 9. On the right side, we get plus or minus, and then we look at 50 and see if there's a way that I can simplify this, kind of break this down. 50 breaks down as 25 times 2. We're trying to factor this so that we can see a factor that's a perfect square. Now when you look at these two square roots, 25 and 2, the only one that you can actually simplify is the square root of 25. So that means 5 comes out of the radical, and the 2 remains inside. So it's 5 square roots of 2. Finally, to get x by itself, we add 9 to both sides. We have x is equal to positive 9 plus or minus 5 square roots of 2. You could try to separate this into the two separate answers. But if you take a look at this right here, if I don't have the minus and I just have 9 plus 5 square roots of 2, there's nothing else to do. So we can leave it here simply as 9 plus or minus 5 square roots of 2. Now there's one other thing I want to point out here. When you're simplifying the square root of 50, and you know that's going to be 5 square roots of 2, that plus or minus goes in front of it. Do not let that plus or minus sneak in between the 5 and the radical. That's going to give you a wrong answer, and then we try to move the 9 over, you're going to try to combine it with the 5, which is all kinds of crazy. So, we use completing the square to create a situation to use the square root property, and we're done.